Okay, so this entire sequence is all about the hips, the hip flexors, and then a couple of hip openers as well. So the hip flexors are a group of muscles that cause flexion at the hip. So in other words, that motion. So the leg towards the trunk or the trunk towards the leg. So it's a closing of the angle here at the hip. The biggest of these hip flexor muscles is the psoas muscle. So this muscle attaches in the lower back here, passes through the pelvis, and attaches again at the femur. It's a very big muscle, it's a very strong muscle, and it's about the thickness of your forearm or of your wrist. When we restrict the movement of our flexors, in other words, when we're doing repetitive motions and our flexors are moving in a very small range, in cyclists, this is particularly true. If you think about a pedal stroke, so you've got the extension of the knee, which then comes down and then flexes. So, but look at the movement through the hip. It's not actually very big. So your knee doesn't come way up and it doesn't extend way down. So you have the small movement within this very short range. So your flexors never flex entirely and they never extend entirely. So what tends to happen is that this muscle becomes tight. And also a muscle that's not worked within its full range of motion can become more prone to injury, to strain, things like that. So what we want to do is begin to work that muscle through its entire range of motion. So we want that very strong flexion, knee up, and the very long extension with that hip open. Runners as well, particularly runners who don't have a lot of motion through the hips when they run, which is actually most of us, particularly road runners and people that are running long distances. If we look at the top world-class athletes and you watch them run, like Eliud Kipchoge, for example, as he runs, he has this very high knee action that comes up and then back. Most of us don't run that like that, or most of us don't run that fast. So we tend to run with a much more energy conserving type of stride. So we don't have a lot of motion through the hips. So our hips also get very tight. And as I've mentioned before, because a lot of us don't run from the glutes, we tend to be quad dominant. These flexors take on a lot of work that the quads should be doing. So the ramifications of tight hip flexors. I told you that the psoas, okay, attaches here in the lower back. So you can imagine if it's tight, where is it going to be pulling? It's going to be pulling on that lower back. So you've got this painful lower back, which for cyclists tends to be a problem anyway because of that permanent bent over motion. If that core isn't tight and supporting, the tight hip flexors just exacerbates everything. So let's work the hip flexors. Let's extend them and let's flex them as well. Standing at the top of your back mat, strong. Inhale, arms above the head, gaze up between the hands. Exhale, forward fold, chest open, hands to the mat, dropping the head. Inhale, flattening that spine. Exhale, stepping your back, jumping back into plank. Chaturanga Dandasana, keep those elbows in. Release, inhale, upward dog or cobra. Exhale, rolling back into downward facing dog. Inhale, raise this right leg up to the ceiling. Now we are going to open the right side. So tilt those hips and drop this right heel down towards the left glute. So this is starting to stretch through these flexors. On the right leg, you should feel the stretch to the front of the leg. It's a nice gentle start to this practice, getting them ready to work through a nice full range of motion. Inhale, let's square back up towards the mat, straighten that leg. Exhale, bring that right knee towards the chest and place that foot between the hands. Okay? And now we're going to drop the left knee towards the mat. So if you need to, grab your towel and drop that knee to the mat, release the left toes. Begin bringing those hips down towards the mat. You don't want this knee to overshoot the toes. And feel the stretch through those left flexors. Roll the shoulders back, engage the core, and inhale as you bring the torso up and the arms alongside the ears. Now you need to look after your lower back in this pose. So make sure that that belly button is pulled back towards the spine and it's not jutting forward. So we're looking after this lower back. It's very easy to cause this compression to the lower back when we're driving these hips forward. If you like, you can drop your right hand to your hip and very gently just stretch the torso across to the right. So we're just lengthening through the left side of the body. Breathe. Inhale, straightening up. Exhale. Bring the hands down to the mat and now engage those left toes and bring that left knee up off the mat. Walk your right foot to the outside of the mat and bring your left hand to the inside of that right foot. And begin to drop those hips down towards the mat. Don't let this knee fall out to the side. Press it into your shoulder. Try and get those hips nice and low. Breathe. So really lengthening those flexors. Inhale. Exhale, bring that right foot back to meet the left. Chaturanga, elbows in, release. Inhale, upward facing dog or cobra. Exhale, into downward facing dog. Inhale those left leg up towards the sky and open up that left hip. Drop that left heel down towards the right buttock and enjoy this nice opening through the left hip here. Just nice preparation for some of the stretching that we'll be doing throughout this sequence. Breathe. Inhale, square off those hips, extend that left leg. Exhale, bring that left knee to the chest. Place that foot between the hands. Drop that right knee down to the mat. Release the toes. And start driving those hips down towards the mat. You should already be feeling that lovely stretching through the right flexor. Again, you're not wanting to shoot this knee over the toes. If it's slightly over perpendicular, that's fine, but we don't want this knee overshooting the toes. Engage that core as you bring the torso up, driving the hips forward again, making sure you're nice and supportive through the core, looking after the lower back. So we're not arching the back, we are bringing the hips forward and the back straight. Bring the arms up, breathe. Again, if you want, bring the left hand to the hip and then bring the torso across to the left. So lengthening along the right side of the body, breathe. Core engaged. Straighten up, extend that left arm, shoulders down. Breathe, driving those hips. Inhale. Exhale as you bring the hands back to the mat. Engage those right toes and bring that right knee up off the mat. Bring the right hand to the inside of the left hand rather to the inside of the left foot and walk that left foot outwards. So the edge of the mat, pushing that knee against the left upper arm so that it doesn't fall out to the side, and just lower those hips as much as you can. If you want to come down onto your forearms in this position and stretch there, that's fine, that's up to you. If you want to stay up on your hands, that's up to you. Listen to your body. Breathe. Inhale. Bring that left foot back to the right. Exhale, chaturanga, elbows in. Release. Inhale. Upward facing dog or cobra. Exhale. Downward dog. Gaze up between the hands. Walk the feet up to the top of the mat. Inhale as you flatten that spine. Exhale, fold. Squeeze the glutes. Inhale to standing. Exhaling. Arms above the head, shoulders down, gaze up between the hands. Exhale, forward fold. Keep that chest open, shoulders down. Drop the hands in the head. Inhale, flatten that spine. Exhale, step or jump back into plank, chaturanga, dandasana. Keep those elbows in. Release. Inhale, upward dog or cobra. Rolling back into downward facing dog. And now we're going to come up onto the toes and jump the feet to either side of the hands. You don't have to do this. You can walk the feet up to either side of the hands if you do want to jump. Look where you're going. Come up onto your toes. Bend your knees. And land with your feet either side of those hands. So we're going to come down now into a nice low squat, malasana. So drop those hips down. Pick your hands up off the ground and bring your hands into prayer. Roll the shoulders back. Keep the gaze up and press the outside of your triceps into the legs. Breathe. If this is too much for you, if you cannot do this, bring your blocks in. Place them underneath you and actually sit down on them. So we're getting that flexion through the hip. So you've got these thighs nice and close to the chest, but there's nice small angle. But we're taking some of that strain off you. So keep on pressing the backs of these arms into the thighs, trying to get the thighs nice and open, the chest open. Draw that abdomen nice and tight. Gaze up. This deep squat is a position which you see children do and comes very naturally to them. We, as we grow up and we start sitting on chairs, we stop performing this motion. It's interesting to note, if you travel around the world, how many people you will find actually sit in this type of squat as a natural way of life. It's something they have done since they were children, and they've never really gone and sat on chairs. And it's also interesting to note that there's a correlation between a lack of back problems in people that do sit like this a lot. So it's that real deep flexion of those flexors that I was talking about before, keeping everything active and keeping the body functioning as it should. Okay, so just breathe. This is not extremely comfortable position, particularly if it's not something that you do and haven't done for a long time. So take it slow, build up your support that it's higher, and then as you become stronger and stronger and your body becomes more accustomed to it, start removing those props, come lower down until eventually you have no props and you can sit quite comfortably for a few minutes in this position, breathing. Okay, I'm just going to remove those. So the best thing we can actually do for ourselves is not to use chairs at all and practicing this position our whole lives. Our hips will be much healthier and our backs will be healthier too. Okay, so breathe. Now bring your hands down to the mat, come up onto those toes and jump back into your plank. I'm just going to walk backwards a little bit. Exhale, chaturanga, keep those elbows in, release. Inhale, upward facing dog or cobra. Exhale, running back into downward facing dog. You're going to drop your knees to the mat. And we're going to come into a pose called frog pose. So I'm going to use a towel for this and actually bring my knee off the mat. So this is a really nice hip opener. It's quite intense though. So come down onto the forearms and support yourself with your forearms and allow this leg to slide out to the right. So you're coming onto the inside of both of those knees and your feet are just relaxed against the floor, and breathe. So we are releasing through those adductors, those inner thighs, through the groin, and working to get that pelvis down towards the ground. Support most of your weight here on the forearms, but don't let your shoulders hunch up. Keep those shoulders away from the ears, breathing. And then come up onto the hands. Again, supporting your weight, bringing that weight forward as you bring that leg close. Bring that knee in and then swap sides. So take your towel to the other side and open up from the left. I'm going to turn around. So it's essentially the same stretch. We're just doing it twice. Forearms down and slide that leg open. Come to the insides of the foot and the inside of the knee. Shoulders away from the ears. Breathe. See if your pelvis can come down slightly closer to the floor this time. And try to relax into the stretch. Try to release all resistance from those hips. And then come up onto those hands. Again, the weight over the hands, supporting yourself with your arms. Bring that leg in towards the body. Okay, I'm just going to turn back around again. So engage the toes. Hand, one hand's length away. Push yourself up and back into downward facing dog. Floating forward into a nice strong plank. Exhale, chaturanga, keep those elbows in. Release, release the toes. And we're going to stay here. Bring the hands underneath the forehead, one on top of the other. So we're going to do a stretch for the flexors and the quads as well. So if this is difficult for you to reach your ankle or your foot without kind of overextending the lower back, use a strap or a towel. So rest the hand on the back of the left, the head rather, on the back of the left hand and bend the right leg. So bring that right hand to that right ankle. And while energetically drawing that heel towards the glute, engage that glute and really press the hips forward and down into the mat. As soon as you engage that glute, you're going to feel that stretch really intensify and comes up a lot higher and right into the flexor. So it's not just the quad that you're hitting here, it's nice and high up into that flexor. So squeeze that right glute, really push those hips forward into the mat. Breathe. Release. And gently lower that leg back to the mat. Let's swap our hands around, bending the left leg. I have to come up a little bit so that I can grab. And then again, just as far as it will come, and start engaging that left glute, pushing those hips, that pelvis down into the mat, stretching through the quad and into the flexors. Breathe. Inhale, release the foot, lower it down to the mat, and you're going to repeat. So just swap your hands, bending that left right leg, and engaging that glute, pushing that pelvis down into the mat. Breathe. Release. Lowering that leg. And let's change sides again. Engage that left glute, pushing those hips down into the mat. Breathing into the muscle, sending the breath anywhere where you're finding any restriction or tension. Surrender to the stretch. And release that foot. Let that come down to the mat nice and slowly. Bring it. Okay. Hands to the sides, underneath our shoulders. Engage the feet. Body nice and strong. Again, pushing up onto the knees. And back into downward facing dog. Or alternatively, shoulders back, core tight, pushing straight up into plank and rolling back into downward facing dog. And then gaze up again. If you'd like to jump the feet forward into sitting position, that's fine. Alternatively, walking the feet forward and coming down onto the mat. And we're going to come into almost a double pigeon pose, or in yin yoga we call it the log pile. So I'm just going to turn to face the front. Okay, so what you're wanting to achieve here is to, first of all, we're sitting up nice and tall through the spine. You want your lower legs to be parallel with the front of the mat. What we're trying to achieve is we're placing, let's start with the left foot on top of the right knee and the right foot underneath the left knee. If your hips are nice and open and loose, this knee is going to be lying flat on this foot. If you're slightly tighter through the hips, it's not going to. A lot of people actually end up sitting like this. If that is the case with you, please use your blocks. Lost my other one. And place the block underneath those legs to give you some support and to provide stability and safety. If not, if your knees are right against the foot, you can see this knee, there's still a bit of space. So I can squeeze a block in there. But if your hips are nice and open, and this is a very easy pose for you to achieve, I'd like you to then to take a nice deep breath in and walk the hands forward and come into a forward fold. Not by curling the spine, keeping it straight and really folding through the hips. That's going to intensify that stretch. So what we're doing here is we're really rotating the top of that femoral head in the pelvis. So it's a lovely, strong hip opener, this. So you're just going to sit here and breathe until you feel it starting to release. No, it's not comfortable, but it will begin to become less uncomfortable. As you breathe, try to relax through the hips. Try to surrender to the stretch. You can shut your eyes if you like. And then we're going to swap sides. So this bottom leg will come to the top. So let's bring that left leg now, again, nice and parallel with the front of the mat, and bring the right leg on top. Notice too which side is less accessible, which side is more uncomfortable. We're wanting to create balance. We're wanting the sides to feel equal. So observe the body and listen and notice, and always observe without any judgment. Again, I'm just going to pop a little block in here. So focusing on the breath. Send your breath to those hips. Feel them releasing and relaxing. Our body always wants to create resistance when we are trying to achieve a stretch. If it's uncomfortable, the muscles in that area immediately tense up. So it has to be a very conscious thing of breathing through that stretch. Number one, most important. And consciously trying to relax all the muscles in that area. Surrendering to the stretch. Trusting that you're not going to hurt yourself. This is the body's natural protection mechanism against injury. Get tight, protect the joint. So just relax. This is a very controlled setting. We're not going to create injury. We're listening to the body. We're not pushing it too far. But we are relaxing into that stretch. This is one of the stretches where we're not active. This is passive. Okay. And uncross the legs. Right. We're going to come through over onto our backs now. So I'm just going to turn sideways again. So you can come straight onto your back if you'd like to make that transition more active. Come forwards onto the hands, up on those toes, jump back into plank, exhale chaturanga, release. Inhale up for dog or cobra, rolling back into downward dogs, nice and high hips, gaze up, either walking the feet or jumping forward as you come to a sitting position. So you're going to come onto your back for this next stretch. So for this, you are going to need, if you have a roller, this is great for this. If you don't, and you've got an extra yoga mat, roll it up nice and tightly just to provide that kind of cylindrical support. Otherwise, if you don't have either of those, grab a couple of quite large towels, place them together and then roll them up. Nice and tight roll, just to create quite a big bolster. So you're going to come onto the back, bending the legs and lifting those hips up off the ground and placing that boulder, those towels, that yoga mat, whichever, underneath the hips. Okay, so it's not up in the lower back, it's just underneath the hips. So your hip bone is directly above, and bend both your legs into the chest. Now, holding on to this right leg, drawing that in towards the chest, you're going to extend this left leg down onto the ground. So you should feel a really strong stretch here through this left hip flexor. So coming from the front of the leg right up, almost into those obliques, drawing that right knee down towards the chest, and just lie here. Enjoy this. Relax those shoulders. Breathe into the flexor. You have the option here, if you like, of releasing the left hand and moving that left arm up above the head to create more length and more stretch through the front side body. It's up to you. Breathe. You can lie as long as you like. Bring this leg up carefully, bend, and then bring it up. Clasp the front of that left leg with the hands and extend. The right leg now, down, and let it rest on the floor. Shoulders away from the ears. Again, the stretch through the flexor comes all the way up into the glute. Try and bring this left knee closer in towards the chest. Breathe. And just stay here if you like, or if you'd prefer, just holding that left knee quite firmly with the left hand, extending the right arm overhead onto the ground, lengthening that body. Breathe. Bring that arm up. Again, bending that right leg. Move carefully and slowly. You've got a muscle that you're taking from this very long extension. It's not used, probably not used to being stretched quite that much. And then bringing it back. It's going to want to return to its normal length quite quickly. And that's when you can sort of have muscle spasms. So just move slowly and let it come back slowly as you bring that right knee back up to the chest. And then you're going to repeat that. So extend the left leg down towards the mat, pulling the right leg in towards the chest, breathing. Slowly bending that left leg, letting that flexor come back nice and slowly, controlled. Bring that left leg up and extending the right leg out along the mat. Drawing that left leg in towards the chest. Again, the second time that you're doing the stretch on both sides, if you'd like to extend that arm again, go ahead. Do what's right for you. Whatever feels good. Slowly, controlled. Bring that right leg back. Release the left and let that left leg come down to the mat. Just hang out here just for a couple of seconds as your body adjusts. Breathe. And then press down with your heels and just engage your glutes. Look after your back as you just lift those hips up a little bit. Slide that prop out from underneath you and lower back slowly, controlled through the spine. Back onto the mat. Very nice. From your back, we're going to come into happy baby. So bring your both feet up off the ground And bring those knees in towards the chest as you bring your hands to the outside of your feet. And pull those knees down towards the armpits. So this is a very strong contraction of the flexors. As I've mentioned, our flexors generally work within a very limited range of motion, particularly with cyclists. So we wanting to extend that range of motion. So we've done that long flexion, that really lovely stretch with our low lunges, with our stretch we just had, where we prop the hips up and stretched along the front of the body. And we also want that strong flexion or contraction as well. Really bringing those thighs close in towards the body. So we're creating this really small angle here between the thigh and the torso. As the flexors are really working. So we created that with the low squat. So this is something that we should add into our daily routine. These low squats with the hips really coming down towards the ground. This is a more kind of gentle approach to that low squat. It's maybe easier to achieve for a lot of people to start developing that flexion through the flexors. So this is a great place to start. And maybe do this every day. And release those feet and bring them down onto the mat. And now extend your legs and come into your twisting Shavasana, end of your practice.